Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Future Proof Podcast. Today's guest is Alexander DeRitter from SmythOS. Alexander, great to have you. We're so excited about this.
I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with you, right? Talk about. I mean, you've had an incredible journey. You've been delving into machine learning and AI for longer than most people, even knew it was around. So just tell us a little bit about your journey. You've done multiple exits. So just talk about you and then kind of how you got up to this point in your career.
Yeah, I got in machine learning out of necessity, like 2008. How do you detect if someone looking at the camera is male, female, age, whatever, happy, sad? How do you do that with just regular code? I'm waiting.
Yeah,
It's hard, right?
No idea.
It's hard. How do you do that? How do you train a computer to recognize this, right? And so this was before the age of deep learning. So you can't tell me I'm going to give you 1,000 pictures of sad people or 1,000 pictures of men. You can't do it, right? That didn't exist yet. Well, you could do it if I was brilliant enough to come up with it, but it wasn't. At the time, it was machine learning, and so you would do feature extraction, right? You would say like, okay, looks like a human. Maybe if you can detect something that looks like eyes, and there's like a nose that you detect, and it's somewhere in between that. Right. Good chances are that maybe it's a human, right? So
were you writing facial rec software before facial rec software was around?
I think facial recognition would imply that you detect the identity of the person. Right. I was more focused on identifying maybe their demographic, so that in marketing context they could. I mean, maybe like Gillette, like for shaving or something. Maybe you have a different ad if you market to a woman than a man. These products are marketed very differently, right? So this idea of like, okay, you're walking in a mall. What people used to still go to malls, and you and you walk by a digital ad display, and like 50% of the time, right, it's marketing to the wrong gender.
Yeah, for sure.
Think about that. You can increase the yield of your ad impact. You can double it by just targeting the right gender. And then like we said, okay, so like what about age, right? You're not gonna market the same toy
right
to an elderly person. It's just not, like, again, you're losing valuable enterprise. So the idea was, can you do stuff that is like typically reserved to like the digital realm, or can you do that in the physical realm? And so that into machine learning. Some really interesting things happen there. We built, and I was working for a company. I'm gonna give a shout out. I haven't done this in a while. Moses, if you're listening, you're the GOAT. So we built like this. So stores had these security cameras in the ceiling,
right?
And so they already had the infrastructure, but for one, they didn't know to detect, like, in the camera, this is a person walking. And then the camera all has like a limited view. I mean, look at your phone, like you're taking a photo and you can't fit everybody in, right?
Right.
So even if you have wide lens, eventually you run out of space, or you have to do like panorama like that. But security cameras have the same issue. There's only a limited amount of coverage they have. And then if it's like properly set up, there may be like some overlap in cameras, like you walk out of one and you enter another.
Yeah.
Or there may be like a little gap, like a little blind spot where you like go here, disappears, and then reappears in another camera.
Yeah.
So what we did is we like mapped the store to it's kind of like when you have the globe and you do a flat projection. So you take all the information from the cameras and you make a projection where you can have like one view of everything. We stitched it together. Again, it's 2008. This was not so easy to do. And then And then we did a camera to camera handoff. So first we detected humans, top to down, like no face. I can just see by the way they walk. I looked at things like their gait, how they walked, their stride, their gait, how they moved, and then their, what clothing they had. And so that allowed us to create a system that could track people from camera to camera to camera to camera, even as they moved about very, very large buildings, like shopping malls or universities or airports.
Right.
And so what you could do with that is now be like, I lost my kid in the mall. Where's my kid? And
Right.
they can identify. Or there's a suspicious package at the airport, a suitcase somebody left behind. Maybe there's a bomb in it. Who left it? When did they leave it? Where did they come from? Where did they go? Or you could draw virtual lines on a map and say, like, here's like the passage to the restroom. No cameras in the restroom, don't
Right.
worry.
Yeah.
But you can count the foot traffic. And so when a certain threshold is reached, then you can send an alert out to the cleaning crew and say, why you go clean every hour? Sometimes there's only two people using it in an hour. Sometimes there's 50 people using it in an hour. Your
Right.
restroom is going to be very dirty or very clean, depending on how much it's used, not necessarily on how much time went by. You've all seen these timesheets, right? Oh,
Yeah.
I went to clean at this hour, that hour. Anyways, it was fun times, and this was before deep learning, and deep learning kind of, you know, ruined everything because it like the stuff that was so hard to do
Now
became
became
like much
easier.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, well, great. This is what I spent the last 3, 4 years of my life on, and,
Right.
and now anybody can do what we just did was so hard to do, and yeah, I can replicate what we did in a fourth of the time now. So yeah, deep learning, it was really honestly like NVIDIA, with CUDA. Without that, I don't think it would have been possible.
Right.
Um, Somebody else maybe would have come up with it, but CUDA was like the thing. And so I remember 2012, 2013, people start using these techniques, and like Facebook starts to look at what's in your pictures. Oh, there's a cat. I can now recognize that this picture, even though this says it's like this picture is about a nice grandma, but it's actually like some picture of like hate or something, whatever you want to say. And so, yeah, maybe in the past they could just look at the caption and say, "Oh, this is safe."
Yeah. Right.
It's a very nice grandma sharing flowers, but the picture was violent,
Yeah.
and they couldn't stop you unless it was like reported and a human looked at it and said, "Yeah, this is not good." They couldn't even look at it. Deep learning changed all that. So I figured, it's only a matter of time before Google is not just looking for keywords in pages and backlinks, but they're looking at what's actually written, how good it
Yeah.
is written, how authoritative it is, what ideas are conveyed, how unique the ideas in it are, um, and start building things like author rank, and so that became something like between 2012 and 2015. It just like kept marinating in my head, like this is going to happen. And I started basically, it's you always lead with empathy. You
Yep.
think like if I was Google, right, and this would be essential for me to fight the cat and mouse game with spammers and link builders and whatnot. There's no way Google's not going to do that. Okay, now you're labeled a visionary just because you asked the right questions,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's like, oh, you knew this was going to happen before. It was like, yeah, all you had to do is just have empathy
Connect the
and ask the
dots.
right
Right.
question,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Right.
like, if you're Google, you have no other choice. So, yeah, I will go on a podcast or talk to someone and say with conviction, this is what's going to happen. And they're like, oh, 4 years later, 5 years later, they message me. It's like, hey, you're such a visionary. How did you know this was going to happen? I'm so like, how could it not happen? All you
Right.
had to do is put yourself in the shoes of Google, look where things are headed, read the news, and like put one and one together. But what happened is Google did exactly that. And when Google launched this, I had already gone a step forward because once you're convinced this is going to happen,
Right.
Then you have a set of new questions. Okay, so if this happens, what does that mean for content publishers? What does that mean for enterprise who have like large content websites? What does that mean for Google? How did they even go about it? What kind of technology would they use? Okay, so like if I'm Google and I'm parsing billions and billions of pages all the time, my biggest cost of operations, probably like my data centers. I have to parse all that. So I can't afford to spend $5 on AI per page to analyze this. That's not going to work. So what techniques, from my computer science background, right? What techniques could they possibly use to solve this problem or this opportunity? Because I know they're going to do it,
Right.
but they're not going to do it in a way that is going to cost more money than they have, because that would break their business model, right? 1 second.
Bless you.
So then the logical conclusion is like, okay, so they're going to use a technology that is affordable and scales. And then you land at embeddings. You read some patents they write. They contributed a lot to things like BERT at the time.
Right.
And then you research how they built BERT, and like the magic that makes it all work is the embedding. The embedding turns text into a matrix of numbers that you can look at, and by just looking at the numbers, you can estimate what it's about. So that's the technology. So then I figured, okay, so like, what kind of embeddings are they likely going to use? Which ones are going to be most effective? And so I set on like a multi-year research project. It was a number of patents, made our own embeddings, made a theory around this, and then a clever idea one day, like it clicked together, and so the pattern of standing out is like learn from what's working,
Right.
but do it better than everybody else.
Absolutely.
So when you apply that rule, right, and you
Right.
apply that to embeddings, then the idea becomes this: what if I take the embeddings of the top content? I find the common patterns between the embeddings, and I create new content that would be perfectly hitting that target embedding of their index, because the top ranking articles would reflect what they think that search term looks like from a math perspective, from a vector point of view.
Right.
So if I create content and I give Google exactly what they're telling me
that they want
is what they're looking for,
right,
then I have a secret weapon. And so we built that, and we patented it, and then we tried it, and the results were mind-blowing. And then that became a large SEO enterprise agency, and we've driven millions of visitors a month to our clients in growth for SEO. In like the half a decade that followed, it was tremendous. Eventually, we sold SEO business,
right,
and we split out the AI research division, and then
right. So the SEO sold, and you kept the AI.
Correct. And then ChatGPT came around, and so the content space is like very, very different. Because the questions you ask when you look at the market, then it's like, okay, now we're going to deal with a new set of problems. And again, like I'm giving you guys a peek in just how I think. So you don't just have to say okay, this is past, but how do you apply this form of thinking to the future? That would be the big win for people listening, if you know how to think about things, right?
Absolutely.
So ChatGPT,
you're hitting on something that I try to say to everybody about how to think about AI. So go ahead, Alexander. This is perfect.
So so ChatGPT is coming out, and so now you realize the masses are now going to have access to this technology that can create content. So then you think, okay, what is this going to mean for the internet? How are websites going to change? How is this going to impact, once again, how is this going to impact search engines? this is the end of the web. There's this thing out there, you can look it up. It's called the dead internet theory. And it's basically when AI generates so much content, you can't uncover any like human written content anymore. And then
Right.
the AI rehashes the AI content it's already seen, and it just floods it to basically drown out any like real meaningful, valuable information. And so at the end, you're left with a dead internet. That's kind of what this is about. Um, but very like on the day like this happened, and even months before it, I remember talking to investors, and I had this chart of content supply versus content demand. And I asked people, I said, what do you think when the content supply is exponential and infinite, while the content demand, the hours in our day,
Mm-hmm.
is just linearly
It's
growing?
finite, right?
The gap between that is called like the attention gap, right? Because we don't have enough time to consume it all. And so if that happens, that gap widens, then what happens was the impact for companies. Okay, well, it means that content that is still found and engaged with becomes exponentially more valuable.
Right.
And it also
Right.
means that standing out becomes exponentially more difficult and exponentially more expensive to stand out. So it has some severe consequences. And nevertheless, um, nevertheless, we saw we saw that people. This is a big personal lesson I've learned, that you can build the best tech in the world, and people don't really care. They don't care that you have the best solution. It's like it's painful to say, and
It
it's
is
hard for me
painful,
to
but
even.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. What people want is the easiest way to solve a problem pain they have. That's it. Period. Period. Like
Yep.
stop what you're doing. Like
Yep.
look at your business and just think about, what pain am I solving? And do I solve it easier than anybody else? That's it.
Yep.
Think about your
Yep.
business, ask these questions, and you're going to find the thing you need to do next, your most important thing to fix. And then repeat. And
Yep.
repeat it until there's nobody else in the market who solves that pain point as well as you, and you're going to win. Like, so ChatGPT is a very basic interface. It's just like chat. The way you interact with it is not sophisticated, but it's simple. It's so simple that, your grandfather or your dad can use it.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
It
And
is.
then they add like voice, and then you can talk to it. And that's making it even more easier. And now in 2025, it's going to become more commonplace, where it's not just your voice, but it will see with eyes just like you see the world and interact visually with it.
Right.
And so this technology is only on one trajectory here. Make it easier and more natural to interact with, to the point where you don't need to learn anything. And of course, you can have very sophisticated tools out there that are maybe better on paper, performing better for marketing, that have like way more science behind it, way more research behind it. People don't care.
Yeah.
It's good enough, and it's way easier. And so the easiest solution to your pain, that wins the market. So that shifted a lot. So I think we were a bit in no man's land for like a year after ChatGPT released. We're trying to really
It's now kind of
find our
settling. Is that
footing.
what you're saying?
Yeah, just the interest for like sophisticated tools that had learning curves for marketing and content. The people didn't care that we had a semantic engine that analyzed the competitors and could score it, and then could help you craft the best content as a human AI dance collaboration. They
Right.
wanted to go to ChatGPT and say, write my article, hit enter, and copy paste.
Yeah.
They don't care if it's worse. That's like the marshmallow test, you know? It
Yeah.
People want that instant gratification, unfortunately. But but it taught me a lot about how I think about business and product. And it's a painful lesson, and I like my inclination, my heart is still like, I want to forget this lesson. I
Yeah.
have to constantly remind myself. I have to keep myself on that straight and narrow. Oh, this feature would be so amazing. I just want to add this feature, right?
Right.
Does it
And
complicate your
as most
product?
product
Right.
teams fall into that trap too.
Oh, it's like you have to constantly remind you. And if you're passionate about what you do,
Hmm.
I mean, there's no other choice. You will be like that. It
Yeah.
is just the way that things are supposed to be. So you need to have a bit of a counterweight to that. And so 2022 was very much about we had just sold this agency, and we had to make sure the company was healthy and growing. And this is the first time the spin out was like standing on its own feet.
Right.
And so there was a lot of like figuring out what are we going to do now. ChatGPT is changing everything, and we got to make sure this goes well. And what are we going to do? And then I was really looking. I was really looking at the market and trying to understand what's next. I had
Right.
I've kind of was writing the future for a long time, but now ChatGPT kind of in quantum in
Right.
quantum
Kind of
physics,
caught
you
some
call
things
this a
up, right?
it's a boundary event. It's a boundary event, meaning that there's a there's a before and after ChatGPT in the world. There's a
Right.
before there's a before and after Jesus Christ. There's a before and after electricity. Like these are boundary events that change
Yeah.
the course of humanity, and you have to reset your assumptions and understanding of how you look at things based on these boundary events. You can't go back in time. The page has been turned. The Romans said the dice has been thrown,
Yeah.
and when it's fallen, and this is where it lands. So you have to not rush into the next thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes as a business, you have to stop and observe and think about what this boundary event means for the future of your business, and look for an opportunity. And looking we did, but we didn't find it till like January, February 2021. And the light bulb moment came when we saw that it was possible for these fuzzy random machines that are AI.
Hmm.
The technical term is non-deterministic. That it was possible for us to wrangle them to give deterministic output formats. And oftentimes, you'll see that show up as like instruct fine-tuned. And
Right.
what is instruct? It's like saying, I'm writing a text, and I want I want you to give me markdown as output. Right? The first versions of AI were, we're not going to really follow your instructions. We're not adhere to the output. And once the AI models, and like early 2023, they started showing promise. I think it was like ChatGPT 3.5, they're about 3.5 or 3.5 turbo, I forget.
Right.
Um, it was thereabouts that AI for the first time started following your instructions as to following an output format reliably.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and
3.5 for
we
sure. Yeah.
and we kind of almost immediately said, wait a minute, this changes everything. I have this thing I said, GPT 3.5 turbo is all you need.
Yeah.
Um, because the moment you have um, output structure adherence,
Right.
you can call APIs. And so I get philosophical about this stuff, but um, Steve Jobs once said that humans are not so exceptional. We're not the strongest animal. Well, look at the bull or the gorilla, right?
Right.
We're not the fastest animal. Look at the
And a
cheetah or
cheetah.
the horse,
Yeah.
right? But I think the fastest animals like the condor or something. I don't know, it's some white
Yeah.
bird, whatever. But then he said like, but then give a human a bicycle, and we're the fastest mammal.
Yeah.
And then he said, computers are bicycles for our mind. So if you look at human history, like we often talk about these boundary events from prehistoric, like, okay, the typical, I'm in elementary school, I learned something about the history of humanity, right?
Right.
Humanity is just cave dwellers, and one day they discover fire and it changes everything.
Yeah.
And then they discover the wheel and it changes
Changes
everything.
everything. Right.
And then they discover the printing press and
Yeah.
writing and it changes everything.
Right.
Opposite order, but you get
Yeah.
it. So
Totally get it.
So there's these inflection moments, these boundary events in the arrow of time that change everything for the future. And then I said, okay, well, AI with function calling is AI's moment of discovering fire and the wheel and every tool all at once.
Yeah.
Right? So this is going to change the world. And so then I started thinking about intelligence. And yeah, I get philosophical about this too, but a cell in a human body is marvelous, but cannot achieve what it can do when it works together with its entirety of a body, right?
Right.
A brain without arms, what is it? You know,
Right.
arms without legs to move it around, what is it?
Right.
And so, we are a superorganism. Humans are a superorganism, but humanity is a superorganism as well. We are a collection of
I'm
cells.
following you. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a collection of cells, and then humanity is a collection of cells working together. And when humans work together, we call that civilization. And so, what happens when you start adding AI that can use tools into that? Well, it is an extension of civilization. It becomes a new type of civilization where AI agents and humans collaborate in a superorganism that is larger and more powerful and more capable than the civilizations that came before it. You think about what is a village scientific output to the net contribution of humanity versus what is a city's net contribution. That you can think of this as neural networks, and the more interconnected we are, the higher density of neurons we have as humans,
Right.
the more advanced our civilization can become. And now what we're doing is we're going from 8 billion human agents or so, we're going to perhaps 20 billion intelligence agents, all interconnected and networked. So the human civilization becomes grander in its opportunities. So I basically look at this the way I look at the web. I remember when people said, I don't need a website, Yellow Pages works well for me.
I remember that well too.
Right? And so I realized it's an inevitability. As I told you, it's an inevitability. Every company will be powered by AI agents and humans working together.
Amen.
And so the question is not if this is going to happen. The question you should be asking is, when this becomes mainstream, accessible, how do I take advantage of this? And if you're a technologist like I am, a researcher, passionate about technology, then you ask the question, how are people going to be able to do this in a way that is easy?
Yes.
And that's why we built SmythOS. We try to build these first agents before the launch of GPT-4,
Right.
before Microsoft's paper Sparks of AGI.
Yep.
We had already built agents on the GPT-3, 3.5 architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And And we had built these agents and we said, this is way too hard. There's got to be an easier way to do this.
Yeah.
And so today, SmythOS is there in the world to help people create these autonomous workflow executing digital coworkers that can work on schedules.
I
and
love
both
that
work
term, by the
on
way,
triggers.
digital coworkers, because people are afraid about replacing. Yeah, what you're exactly right. It's humans are going to manage AI, and they're going to coexist with it. And what you're talking about is that digital coworkers.
Yeah,
Yeah, I will. I will have to leverage that. I will give you credit on that one, Alexander. I like it.
I'll count on it. So that's where SmythOS came into the picture. And like an easy way to think about it is like building a website was hard before WordPress.
Mhm.
Building an e-commerce was hard before Shopify.
Right.
Doing checkout, accepting credit cards on your site was hard before Stripe.
Yep.
Sending payments to friends was hard before PayPal.
Mhm.
So
and Venmo
there's
and right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some moments in time when people recognize, this is something everybody's going to need, or many people are going to need this.
Right.
And then some companies stepped up and filled that and made it easy so that people could do it. And so there's many ways for people to automate stuff for using AI now, but nothing is built like from the ground up with ease of use and flexibility and power in mind, the way SmythOS has. One of my favorite parts of SmythOS is the OS part. People who don't know what we build give me grief, and it's like they think only Microsoft Windows can be an OS.
Not true at all.
But if you look at the architecture of how agents communicate with each other, how memory is handled, how drivers for storage and networking is handled, how they are executed, paused, resumed, how security is handled, all those layers. You look at the architecture of it, and you would think I'm looking at the Linux kernel, but it's not. It's a 15 megabyte runtime that runs on devices as small as Raspberry Pi and as large as NVIDIA data centers.
Right.
You can run your agents without the further dependencies on any device. And so SmythOS is a grounds up first principle approach to solving the need of the coming workforce 3.0.
Yeah.
We're early.
Yeah.
There's many people that are trying to do it. Many wrappers out there. God, how many times can you take an open source framework, build a little wrapper around it, and call yourself a company? Just
Right.
go and do something fundamental, right? Make some actual change rather than just monetizing what people have done. Now, SmythOS is, I believe, an incredible technology, and it's an incredible. What's most exciting is what people do with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if I were to ask you, right, because one of the concerns that I've had from a lot of my podcast interviews is that, hey, I'm afraid of commercial software with AI because I feel like I'm opening my security, up, and I feel like I'm unloading my intellectual property, right? Mm-hmm. So how would you answer that? Because I feel like you have thought through that at a deeper level. Yeah.
Yeah. Clearly, this is a very common question. So with SmythOS, you choose where your data goes. You choose the AI model. You can use any open source model. You can use any commercial model. You can use locally hosted models. You can use models that run on your enterprise Bedrock or Vertex. I've got at home, I've got a computer. I've got local models running here with my most personal information.
Right.
And things I don't want to send to the cloud. But then there's clients who say, I don't want my data to go to so-and-so company. SmythOS lets you, it's an orchestration platform. It's not an AI company. SmythOS is an orchestration platform, meaning you can bring any data source any AI model, and multiple AI models at that. You know,
That's
you can
fantastic.
orchestrate anything you want. So when you're concerned about security and you want to use AI, figure out the AI that you trust by the company you trust, or if you don't trust any, that you run yourself, and you orchestrate with that AI. Every AI is like a mini person with their quirks and their strengths and weaknesses,
Right.
and
Strengths and
you
weaknesses.
get
I say the same thing
right.
all the time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So get to know your new colleagues.
Yeah.
Get to know who. Yeah. But if you need a hint or two, join our Discord channel. Ask around. We're happy to give you some pointers on what AI models work really well for different use cases and automation.
Love that. Love that. A couple other questions I have for you. So, you're doing all kinds of interesting stuff. What's something that you've done really interesting that listeners would love to hear in the last 3-6 months with AI?
Well, there's like two. One that's released and one that's like soft released,
Soft
pre-released.
release. I love it.
One is Agent Weaver. This one's released. And after we built the platform that you can drag and drop instead of having to code, and you can visually see how your agents are thinking. Like, what? Okay, they do that. Okay, do that. Okay, now they're doing that. Okay, wow, here's the output, and you can see it. It's wonderful. Drag and drop, and you can see them working.
And what is that? What is that called?
But but then we did an extra step, and that's Agent Weaver.
The Agent
And we
Weaver.
said that people still need to learn what components to use, how to configure them, how to connect them. Can we make it even easier? And so Agent Weaver is an AI agent built in SmythOS
Mm-hmm.
that builds an AI agent for you with just chat instructions. And it will know the components and how to configure them and how to connect them. And if you give it like an API documentation web link, it's going to read that page, read the API specs, and even build your API connections for you. If you give it a
Wow.
picture of a workflow that you draw out, it's going to look at the picture and build that workflow for you. It's going to be aware of the API keys that you frequently use or design patterns that you prefer, and it's going to intelligently build agents for you. It's the first in the world. I mean, at least to this level of sophistication, and that's a that's a watershed moment for this industry because the
And it goes
agents you
back to
can build with
your
Smith.
give them a tool that's simple to use and right. Yeah.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
obsessed about this. This
Yeah.
is that's the North Star. Make it like think about what users need and then make it as easy as possible. And then there's a second innovation that we have, and it's a really cool one. We call it Agent LLM, and that we had a working title, Meta LLM, but I figured like people would not really know what it means. Agent LLM, the concept is that once you finish building all your agent skills, right,
Mhm.
you could just have API calls into every skill and just run them like APIs.
Mhm.
But what if you can wrap it inside of an AI model itself, where you create a new LLM from multiple LLMs, APIs, data sources, and workflows all combined in one agent,
Like like
so
a
that you
manager of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So the but then I said, well, let's go one step forward. Everyone is integrating OpenAI and LLMs in their apps and is using the OpenAI SDK, right?
Hmm.
What if I can publish my agent that I just made in SmythOS as an LLM, abstracted as an LLM, compatible with the OpenAI SDK, and all you have to do is switch your server and bring your prompt. But instead of just being one LLM, it could be five. And instead of just being LLMs, it could also do stuff like agents, like check your email and send stuff when you talk to it.
Right.
And anybody can create these agent LLMs now. And we have just implemented a pass-through mode as well, where it can like start streaming by skipping delay waiting on certain components and like 5 times faster response times for people. Um, you can build with SmythOS Agent LLM, you could build an AI model now that uses other AI models to orchestrate it, but that would be every benchmark in the world, because you would combine the different strengths of different models, plus add different data sources, whatever it needs.
Right.
And you can make your own, state-of-the-art best model in the world by turning your agent into an LLM and use it with a snippet of code that everybody uses that has ever used AI models in their code.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. So if someone wanted to play with it, is that something we could link here? And
I hope so.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So SmythOS with a Y,
Mm-hmm.
and SmythOS.com. Just go to our website.
Yeah. We'll put all the links in below so they can do that.
I mean, we've got our free plan is good enough for you to play with and try.
Yeah.
And if you like it, join our Discord. You'll find it in our app. Ask questions. Hey, I want to build this. How do I do it? Explore the templates we have. Play with Agent Weaver. So, and then if you like, subscribe to the Value of Growth podcast.
Yeah.
Because he brings me on, and subscribe to
exactly.
it.
Alexander, I have so much more to cover with you. We're definitely bringing you back very soon. Last question I always ask at the end is, again, I like to highlight all of the opportunities that I see coming up, and I love having guests like you, Alexander, because you're basically, giving people a roadmap of really how to. Because most of our interviewees are always, and our podcast guests are always asking, where do I start if I haven't, right? And SmythOS to me is a great place to start. I think you have to start small, right, and start to figure out how the AI integrates. So you've given a great roadmap, especially with the Agent Weaver and the Agent LLMs. But SmythOS has so much more to offer. So I always ask that the tougher question at the end, right, is every business has an opportunity and or a struggle that they're trying to fix in the coming year. So for 2025, if you could fix one thing in your business and wave a magic wand and it be done, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, that would be a tough question that I have to think about for a while if I haven't already spent all my time thinking about this in the annual planning for months. I will tell you, we have a project for Q1 that goes to this annual goal, and we call it mid-funnel bling.
Mid-funnel bling. All right, you're gonna have to describe that.
And I do have to wrap in a few minutes, so I'll keep this brief. But people come to SmythOS and they try Weaver, and Weaver builds their agent. Mm-hmm. But today they can't really see the agent working with giving outputs unless they also connect their different APIs, because we're an orchestration platform. Yep. And of course that creates great flexibility, and people love it because there's like no middleman, there's no overhead. We're just like, if you want coding, you have to bring your own API too. So we figured, that's what developers want. But the downside of it is that you now have to go sign up for 2-3 services, get API approval, plug that in, go back, and before you can see Smith working. Yeah. Mid-funnel bling is all about, can we preload SmythOS with certain API keys so that a really large swath of agents that you could build out of the box also immediately start working for you. Image generation, YouTube parsers, social media, you name it. And you come to Smith and you say, build this, and you see it being built, and then you can immediately see it working too, out of the box. Mid-funnel bling. All about this obsession about making it easy for people.
Yeah, I love that.
This quarter is mid-funnel bling. It's about activating people. It's already working, but you have to bring your API keys. So now
so you're trying to eliminate that friction point so they can see it in action.
And then you can still bring your own API keys if you don't want to use ours, right?
Yeah.
we're not taking away from people, but we want to get people get them to see just how amazing it is.
Yeah,
Right out of the box without effort. And then as for Q1, then we're going to continue in next quarter. We're going to continue to make that even easier for, we're going to revamp how easy people can find how to debug properly. And we're going to make it even easier for people to see and understand how amazing our deployment, versioning, and everything is. And then finally, we want people, it's already all there. It just has a smidge of a learning curve. At some point, we made a 20-hour course of SmythOS, and I said, this is a problem. It's a problem. If it needs 20 hours of education, it's a problem. And so I want SmythOS to be a product that all of this, and by the way, AI agents is complex. It's difficult.
Yeah.
I want to be so easy that our chief revenue officer, who knows nothing on technology, can just go in there and build a finance or a sales agent without asking for help and without having to read documentation. That's the thing I want to solve in 2025. I want to make building AI agents that easy.
That's a phenomenal goal. And you need to put your CRO on video of building one when you get it to that, because then you're like, hey, if he can do it, anyone can do it.
Oh, yeah. We're getting there. One step at a time.
Oh, Alexander, this has been an absolute delight. You honestly, just listening to your journey and what you guys are doing at SmythOS, I'm excited. I can't wait to start playing with the platform myself. And I'm going to have some of my team members doing that as well, because I believe in what you're talking about is we need to make it simple. Workforce 3.0 is exactly the right term, right, that people talk about. And digital coworkers is how people should think about AI agents. So love this. And I know we can cover a zillion other things, and I'm sure we're going to have you back very soon, right, to cover some of that if you're open for it. But thank you again. It's like I said, it's been an absolute delight. And when the podcast goes up, all the links to start working with SmythOS will be right below. Alexander, thank you so much.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.